for joining. My name is Soni RK. I'm a senior manager at Food and Land Use Coalition in India. Thanks for joining for this session on accelerating food system transformation in India, a folk to farm approach. Hope all of you had a nice lunch here itself or wherever you had. And I think this may be the right time to talk about the environmental, social, and political complexities of food we consume and the way how we produce food and how we transform the current unsustainable ways of food system into more sustainable one. So our session is organized in such a way that we have 7 speakers. We have a wonderful list of speakers for today. I request all of them to come on stage, please. Let me invite Dr. Jayahari, who is the country coordinator of Food and Land Use Coalition in India. Over the last 20 years, Jayahari's work focused on natural resource management and biodiversity conservation. Later, he led Sahajivan, an NGO working in pastoral and dryland agriculture as a executive director of the organization. And before taking up his role as a FOLU country coordinator, he played an instrumental role in building special databases in India, like India Observatory at the Foundation of Ecological Security and Restoration Opportunity Atlas of India at World Resources Institute India. So I request Jayahari to give a little bit context into today's session, and then we'll go to the speakers. They'll be talking on specific aspect of food system transformation related work which FOLU does. And Jayahari will also give a brief introduction to FOLU, how the work we are doing. Over to you, Jayahari.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think post-lunch we are waiting for some more people, but still, let's start. So, many of you many of you must be thinking like, what once you hear the presentations, what's the role of some rural activities in an event which mainly focus on cities? Even my colleagues asked me when I invited them to come here and present it. So this is something like, we want to tell frequently that there is a connect. Before getting into it, let me say, FOLU globally is an association of organizations and experts which works towards sustainable food system transition. So we did an economic analysis of the cost and benefits of food system in 2017. And, we found that we are creating more economic damage than the overall volume of the food system as a whole. So there onwards, we started thinking about sustainable food system transitions, and we know the way, including India, is sometimes struggling to translate the food security into nutrition security, and hidden hunger is always becoming a trouble or a menace which we need to address. And last session, which we discussed, I heard a very pertinent question about global hunger index, and I was just discussing with that expert who asked that question, that GHI is not talking about hunger. Actually, the way and the pace in which our country is managing its malnutrition problems, and it's not that we are hunger, a bunch of or a huge chunk of hungry people. Rather, the hidden hunger we are not managing properly. So a food system transformation, sustainable food system transformation should definitely think about sustainable production, should think about a sustainable distribution system, and an effective justice, included and inclusive consumption system. So we work across, and we know that inclusion, climate change mitigation, adaptation, resilience building, and all and livelihood improvement are all coming as a cross-cutting themes across. So FOLU in India is a partnership of, it's actually different types of partnership we have. We have core partners who can see, except RRA, WRI-India is the India Secretariat, and we have CEW, Council for Energy, Environment and Water, and we have TERI, the Energy Research Institute, and we have another organization called RRIN. Many of you must be knowing about them. They are actually a group of 600 grassroots level organizations working towards sustainable rainfed area management. So basically, we work with think tanks, we work with the organizations who are working on ground with farmers, and we have other associations as well. WRI-India is leading. Just before you heard, in this hall we heard about food loss and waste. There's Champion 12, Friends of Champion 12.3, network, which is managed by, led by WRI-India. We have another, network called Crust, which to work on the sustainable international supply chains connected with India, especially the commodities which are connected with deforestation linked commodities. And we are now coming up with a new platform. I would say it's a hub, basically the India Food System Transformation Hub, where the overall food system transformation as an agenda will be handled. So this is about FOLU. And now coming to the question, like, what are you rural people working in an urban conference? Let me tell you, right? The work what FOLU we did with WRI-India was an eye opener: sustainable urban and peri-urban agriculture. So Manas was asking a question just in the last session, and I think he can ask it again here because there will be a presentation coming over that as well. So so what we understand is the WRI data says by 2036, right? 2036, 40% of our population will be living in cities. And 40% of the population are going to make our cities the real black holes of commodity consumption. And these commodities are coming from the rural areas and peri-urban areas. That's the connect. The connect between folk to farm is basically the connect between rural or peri-urban and urban. And let us think about this connect, the seriousness of this connect. We have seen how these long distance supply chains have broken during COVID. Most of us must have been on the street distributing food kits and all, and we must have seen very clearly how vulnerable are the urban communities in terms of access to food. And we have seen, like, the kind of malnutrition, the hidden hunger emerging in urban areas, and the diversity of the plate you eat and the capacity to access that diverse plate is going to be a problem. And this diversity comes from the diverse agriculture which is happening on in the rural area. And the other connect, let me tell you, right? When we say that we are becoming the black holes of consumption, we are creating, the urban is creating the demand. Slowly we understand that the millet production is slowly increasing in the rural India, especially in the rain-fed India, because of the demand which is coming from the urban area. Urban people are getting more and more aware about it, aware about a superfood which at least once in a day to be consumed, and the rural is producing it. So the rural agriculture production architecture changes according to the demand we create. So that's another connect which comes. And the quality of food, like we are always talking about a premium price, or whether to go for a premium price or affordability and all, but the quality of food which the urban consumes depend on the quality of the food which the rural produce, actually the peri urban produce. So in terms of accessibility to quality, the good quality food with nutritious, with its all nutrition's content, without pesticides and safe food and all, is really depends upon the rural production. And again, food loss and waste, we discussed 1.5 hours about it. The longer the supply chain, chances for the loss is higher. So from where you are buying it is a question. Most of the time we take economic decisions. If the food, if the tomato is available for 25 rupees in Gurgaon and 8 rupees in the rural Andhra Pradesh, a wholesaler would like to buy two big trucks from Andhra Pradesh rather than buying it from Gurgaon. But that creates a lot of emission, energy footprint, etc. So this is another connect which comes. So the finally, like I told you about the demand and how the urban behaves. How the urban community behaves is going to create the type of demand for rural. So this is mainly, I can highlight the way the rural and urban are connected, and this is why we are here to talk about some rural stories, some peri-urban stories are also there. And CW is going to talk about the recalibrating agriculture subsidies, the fertilizer subsidy, the water subsidy and all. So the point is, the power consumption, the endless power consumption, when it is going to free going to be free for the farmer, and the kind of endless water absorption. Sony, stop me when I'm endless water absorptions they are going to make for agriculture, the extensive use of fertilizer and poisoning the soil degradation, all these are going to affect the urban plate. It can create the cost, inflation. It can influence the quality of the food. It can influence the kind of the power availability, etc., etc. So that's why this work becomes very much relevant for the urban. We'll talk about food loss and waste. I'm not talking too much about it because we heard about it last 1.5 hours ago. But we have another work which is led by WRI-India, Sustainable Urban and Peri-Urban Agriculture. Let me tell you the way those consultations which we had were eye-opener for us, like the way we can sustainably connect urban and peri-urban through food, even creating the manure for sustainable agriculture in the peri-urban area using the theories of circular economy and all. And these stories really establish the connect. And we will hear from Terry about the diversification, agriculture diversification story. I told you again, like the more diverse is your rural production, the more accessible diverse plate is going to be for urban, no doubt about it. And we have seen the problems emerging in this country, both in rural and urban, as malnutrition, because our agriculture production has just skewed towards a rice and wheat system, because of the green revolution based interventions. Manish is going to highlight, no, enlighten us how FOLU as a team is trying to address it and create a model in Punjab. And again, another story from Vidu, like how we can see the point is like rural. This is something which we are experimenting right now in rural, but can be done in urban as well. And a point which emerged during the SUPA consultations, leading to that as well. Vidu's team is actually in Mukteshwar, Terry's Mukteshwar area, is doing a wonderful work where the production is sustainably produced commodities are processed through alternate energy or renewable energy, solar and all, and produced into nutrient rich diet or meal for school children, especially those who are not going to consume egg or meat as the eggs in the midday meal scheme and all. This is going to be a good supplement for those kids, and this is not only helping the kids for nutrition, but that local self-help groups for improving their livelihoods as well through food processing. So create those local loops, and then move that public expenditure towards the midday meal scheme and all, to those livelihood enterprises and nutrition enterprises there. So this model is not only applicable actually in in rural. This is very well can be done in urban, and we have a large workforce, or jobless workforce in urban, who can think about getting this nutritious products from the peri-urban and convert it into diet and distribute in the urban schools as well. So we are not restricting to school. I know, no, Vidu will tell the whole story. I'm just touching upon. So in brief, I have explained how these stories which you are going to hear are connected with a kind of a strong urban food system. The last point I want to make is, when we are thinking about a sustainable food system transformation, if we leave out this urban rural connect through between farm and folk, then we are not going to achieve its full objectives and aims. And I end there, and back to Sony for.
Thanks, Jahiri, for setting up that context and also answering the question, why our rural work is, we want to showcase our rural work in a program which is focusing on mainly cities and urban. And obviously, when we move towards more population living in the city area, we would look at how we ensure this transition more just and sustainable one, and how we don't burden the villagers or the agriculture producing communities and the in the villages. Now I invite Ms. Vidhu Gupta, who is an associate fellow at DERI, the Energy and Resources Institute. Vidhu has almost 12 years of work experience in nutrition and environment health epidemiological studies. Her research focuses on improving malnutrition in terms of micronutrients, traditional crops available and standardizing the lab assays for nutritional biomarkers and environmental effects. So her current research, like Jahiri also mentioned about that, it aims to develop micronutrient-rich produce in hilly terrains and exploring the traditional indigenous crops available to improve the nutritional status for children. So she'll be talking about the sustainable nutrition and livelihood security in the rural Uttarakhand. Vidhu, over to you. Just let me open the presentation.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Soni. The study which we are doing in Mukteshwar is basically the sustainable nutrition and livelihood security in rural Uttarakhand. Giving a brief background of what exactly we were planning was there is a triple burden of malnutrition in India, and by triple burden, we are actually looking at undernutrition, overnutrition, and micronutrient deficiencies. As you might be aware, the recent NFHS 5 National Family Health Survey clearly shows that there is about 67% children under 5 years of age suffer from anemia, 35% are stunted, 32% are underweight. Even the adult population is affected by malnutrition. Uh, in the age group of 15 to 49 years, with 57% women and 25% men as anemic. Coming on to the underweight status in adults, about 19% of women and men are thin. And the growing concern is the prevalence of obesity along with the undernutrition in women and men, according to NFHS 5. We also look at the enhancing nutritional security in India. We know that India is self-sustainable in the production of cereals, vegetables, and other food commodities, but still we are far from attaining nutritional security across India. We need an improvement in farmer livelihood. So there's the development of nutrient densification micro enterprises in rural areas for improving accessibility to affordable micronutrient intake, along with a strong campaign to eat healthy. Along with nutrition, there's also an important perspective of wash practices. So we are trying to explore the existing sanitation and water issues, which result in poor absorption of nutrients, thereby exacerbating the nutrition challenge. So the rationale for this initiative, which we are conducting in Mukteshwar, basically has three dimensions. The technological interventions, which is basically we are trying to improve the food supply chain, including the solar energy-based food technologies, and assisting them in the off-season availability of affordable agri-produce, and also identifying suitable water treatment strategies to provide access to safe drinking water. The next dimension is the nutrition leadership, which is basically advocating the nutritious choices through tools of literacy and behavioral change using extension and outreach activities, promoting the concepts of diet diversity through a range of knowledge tools for different group of stakeholders. And the last dimension is the policy mechanisms, which is basically to create an ecosystem to enhance the micronutrient content of food by promoting diverse healthy diets and also expanding dietary components of existing programs such as Integrated Child Development Scheme to include agricultural produce cultivated locally. Coming on to the objectives, we are looking at to strengthen the sustainable agri practices and reintroduce local nutrient-dense products in the diet of climate-sensitive district of Uttarakhand. Nutritional awareness of women, children, and community in the study area focusing on the diet diversification and promotion of consumption of nutrient-dense foods. Developing and promoting intake of micronutrient-rich local products in communities across income groups and across seasons, engaging local institutions in food processing using renewable energy, and sales of micronutrient-rich products through linking it with Poshan Abhiyan and other e-marketing channels. Identifying and developing mechanisms for enthusing convergence of multiple departments for better health and livelihood status of community, and finally conducting the water quality surveillance in the proposed study areas. So these are the four arms of our study, which includes health, livelihood, climate change, and wash practices. A little bit detail on each of the arm. As we know, the nutrition challenge exists in hill and mountainous regions with inter-district and interstate variations. There is a need of diet diversification in the food plate across seasons. The changing behavior patterns lead to preference of diets with less nutritional quality, and there is rising fresh produce prices, especially in the off season, which results in a reduction in their purchasing power, quantity, and quality of food they can afford. So in order to deal with this kind of situation, we are trying to envisaged to improve knowledge and consumption of locally available nutrient-dense crops that are accessible and affordable, and this will also increase the demand and enable agriculture diversification to produce the desired crops. The next arm is the climate adaptation and mitigation. As we know, India is the third largest GHG emitter. Appropriate practices and technologies in food sector promoting sustainability and reducing carbon footprint becomes crucial. Renewable energy mini-grids have potential to improve food shelf life and better processing and storage. Therefore, we are trying to pilot feasibility of using solar panels to produce nutrient-dense products and also demonstrate and showcase the potential benefits of using renewable energy for food production, processing, and storage. The next arm is sustainable livelihoods. Relocalizing the food supply bring economic and environmental benefits. Reducing the food loss and waste have immediate effect on the lives of small-scale farmers. This increases the productivity, ensuring a sustainable and stable food supply, and the use of renewable energy-based food processing creates more local jobs. Therefore, we are involving the local women self-help groups existing in the area in production of these nutrient-rich products, and we will improve their skills, generating more opportunities for them. The last arm of the study is water sanitation and hygiene. As we know, water is crucial for healthy growth and development and ensuring better nutrition. Poor water quality leads to diarrheal diseases, especially in children under 5 years, affecting their nutritional status. In hilly regions, traditional drinking sources such as open wells, springs, etc., are susceptible to microbial contamination. Therefore, we are trying to conduct a water quality testing exercise for the identified drinking water sources and also conducting a survey exploring understanding of communities' sanitation and hygiene practices. Thank you.
Thanks, Vitu, for giving insight into the work you do in the hill states. Now, let me invite Dr. Nitya Sharma, who is a program manager with the food loss and waste team at WRI-India Sustainable Landscape and Restoration. Nitya's work includes helping build strategies to reduce food loss and waste at all supply chain levels, and she also anchors the Friends of Champion 12.3 network in India. And prior to joining WRI India, she worked as a postdoctoral researcher at the Center for Rural Development and Technology at IIT Delhi. Please, I welcome Nitya. Just let me open this.
Thank you so much, and welcome everyone. So I really feel delighted to, take this conversation ahead forward from our last session on food loss and food waste, where we had we had an enlightenment discussion from the various stakeholders panel member in the panel, which were talking about discussions on technology and then food banking, food donation, and financial intermediaries and advisory services and so on. So for the audience right now today, I would like to go ahead and first introduce food loss and food waste, and what does food loss and food waste mean actually. So when we talk about food loss, so it is basically the decrease in quantity and quality of food which results from the decisions and actions by food suppliers in the segments of the supply chain, excluding retail and food service providers as well as the consumers. So these are also known as post-harvest losses. While food waste, it is basically decrease in quantity and quality of food, which results from the decisions of retailers, food service providers, and consumers. So if we go deeper into food waste, talking about the consumer level food waste, so large quantities of wholesome edible food is basically often unused or leftover at the food service providers and the households. So that comes as the consumer level food waste. So these are basically discarded from the household kitchens or eating establishments. So when we talk about household or retail level food waste, so the produce that is actually termed as ugly looking produce and isn't optimal in terms of quality or the looks, so they are basically discarded during the sorting and grading operations. So they come under the retailer or wholesale level food waste. Another thing that also comes under this category is the food that is close or beyond. If we talk about the, ready to eat or processed food, so the food that is at or near the expiry date, so they are discarded by retailers or consumers and are categorized as food waste. So we had a very interesting discussion in our last session as well. So how food banking India network is basically working on redirecting this near expiry food to the people who can actually consume it, and it is not turned into waste. Where does basically food loss and food waste happen? So food loss basically happens at the farm level, in the transit, and during food processing. While food waste, this basically happens at the stores, restaurants, or at home. So as I've already categorized before, so there is basically a question that people usually have in their mind. So why do we need to have food loss and food waste separately? So well, to answer that, it is important to understand where food loss and food waste take place in the food supply chain. The stakeholders for the food loss, that includes farmers, transporters, traders, and wholesalers, whereas for the stakeholders for food waste are retailers and consumers. So it is basically important to identify them for the causes and solutions, because they both differ for all the stakeholders. So, and the impact just keeps on adding as we move from farmer to consumer, and then to landfill. So, talking about some statistics of food loss in India. So, there has been a recent study which was released by MOFPI, where the post-harvest losses of 54 crops and commodities were evaluated, which included farm level operations as well as the market channels, storage and processing units. So, the highest losses were observed for fruits, followed by vegetables, cereals, pulses, oil seeds, and so on. And the major identified gaps were post-harvest management and strategies to reduce post-harvest losses. So there is a major gap between the management practices and the tailored interventions that are required as a solution to fill this gap, to reduce the post-harvest losses. And the suggested interventions from the study were good farm level practices, promotion, accessibility and training for the machineries for the farmers and other stakeholders, value addition through processing, improvising, cold chain, and so on. And as per the study, the estimated losses in 2022, which was a study which was the period where the study was released, was approximately 18.5 billion US dollars. So talking about some statistics on food waste. So, as per, we already know, the farm output of 270 million tons of India has been, sufficient enough to feed its own population since 2015. Yet, a significant proportion of Indian population, which includes 67.1% of children and 59.1% of women, suffers from anemia. And as per a study from UNEP, food waste index report that was released in 2021, it estimated that global average food waste is around 121 kg per person annually, with India's household food waste estimated to be 50 kgs per person annually, which amounted to the estimated household food waste of 68.7 million tons per year. But just wanted to mention that this was based on three studies basically, and that too was very regional. One was based out of Rajam in Andhra Pradesh, and other two studies was from Dehradun. So my point talking here is basically, from burning crop residues that deplete the air quality, to extensively using chemical fertilizers that really affects the soil quality, and to managing the greenhouse gases that is produced by food waste in the landfill. So these emissions and these problems of producing food, these keeps on adding as we go through different various levels of supply chain. So talking about a very recent study on food waste. This was conducted by Ipsos along with Unilever. So this estimated that the metro cities have a food waste of around 70.9 kgs per household per year, and of non-metro cities it was around 58.5 kgs per household per year. So based on our research, which was basically a study conducted by WRI-India and Food and Land Use Coalition, FOLU, that summarized that the key three areas that actually needs attention to work for this pressing issue of food loss and food waste are identifying the magnitude and hotspots of measuring food loss and waste in India, basically measuring, adopting a harmonized yardstick for measuring food loss and waste, and then building a coalition for guiding research and mobilizing action. So for this, what we have been doing in WRI India and along with FOLU is to basically achieve the SDG target of 12.3 by 2030. This Friends of Champion 12.3 network, the name you have already heard from Jehari. So this is basically a global, this Friends of Champions network supports the global movement that is led by Champions 12.3 with the World Resources Institute and Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality of Netherlands as co-secretariat. So the Friends of Champion 12.3 network basically unites businesses, institutes, and organizations that share a common goal to work towards reducing food loss and food waste in India through a collaborative agenda that drives the action by fostering multi-stakeholder collaborations. So currently we have 12 valuable members as a part of this network, which you can see. And these includes the Netherlands Embassy, Agriculture Departments of the Netherlands Embassy, WWF, CRB, seed and early stage venture investors like Sangam Ventures, Omnivore, and then startups like Green Pots, Solar Raheja, and then Waycool, OTP, and other members like Global Food Banking Network for this India Global Food Banking Network, and this is Samunati, which is a final intermediation and services. Apart from this, we also have Center of Sustainable Cooling from University of Birmingham, and they are already working in Haryana and Telangana on developing a pilot for a cold chain technology. So further in order to achieve our goal to inspire ambition and mobilize action, we actively involve these network members by holding quarterly meetings and engagement for collaboration. Next, we have also had a stakeholder consultation on inspiring and mobilizing action to reduce food losses in retail supply chain. So, as we know, food loss in the retail supply chain is a pressing issue, with about 95% of fresh produce moving through the unorganized sector. And while the organized sector is growing in urban areas, only 5% of total produce is marketed through the organized retail outlets. So in the unorganized sector, food loss can reach up to 35% of the total quantity, with a significant portion occurring at the point of sale due to mismatch between the demand and supply. So additional losses, they happen at various stages of the supply chain, such as harvesting and farm gate in transit. While as the data gap exists, particularly in the unorganized sector and at aggregation points, making it challenging to basically measure and address the food loss effectively. The next we do is we also have been actively collaborating with the network members, the Friends of Champion India network members, to develop business case studies. And our objective is basically to analyze food loss and waste within their supply chains, identify key drivers and challenges, and identify best practices that can actually offer evidence-based, data, and the recommendations. So these case studies are basically divided into two types of categories. The first part is of understanding the supply chain operations, basically the scope of business operations where the food loss and waste may occur, awareness, whether they have some awareness on food loss and waste issues, and the methods if they use any. And the second part is on food loss and food waste management in their business operations, awareness on the impact, and if improving awareness and understanding, by educating their staff if they are actually creating some traction on food loss and food waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitya. Thanks for highlighting the difference between the food loss and food waste, and which people often taken for granted, and also highlighting the importance of measuring, which we also had a detailed discussion that in the morning session on food loss and waste. Our next speaker is Abur Khandewar. Abu leads the Sustainable Food System program at CEW. He has years of experience working on different sustainability challenges in the arena of bioeconomy. Currently, his work at the state level, specifically building on state level strategies for scaling up sustainable agriculture, assessing the potential for bioeconomy in catalyzing jobs and economic growth in India. I invite Abu to talk about their work of recalibrating agriculture subsidies in in Rajasthan.
The government support to agriculture determines the incentive structure around the actors in the food system. And I want to very quickly link this presentation, sort of building upon what Hari did. So, the incentive structures of the actors, particularly farmers, drive what farmers produce and how they produce it. That what farmer produce ultimately determines what becomes available and affordable on your plate, and thus what they produce determines the diversity of the food that you eat and the quality of health. It also determines how resource intensive the production methods are. It determines the amount of resource, therefore, the agriculture in total will consume. In 2030, we expect, based on a CW study, that 87% of water would be going to agriculture. That means less water is becoming available for various other purposes, including domestic uses and urban consumptions. So, what farmers do or what agricultural actors do have clear influence on our health, on the water availability, on the resource availability to other sectors, and therefore it is important to look at the incentive structure and the government incentives to agriculture, and where is the need to recalibrate them, and how do we do that? What is impeding that recalibration? And one example we want to put out what we are trying to do in Rajasthan to move the transition. Very quickly, folks who are hearing about CW for the first time, we are a not for profit policy research institution, a leading one in South Asia. We are a team of 200 researchers plus. At the moment, we are working on multiple topics you see on the screen. We have footprint in 22 Indian states. We are working with multiple UN government ministries. This year, we are also either strategic advisor or knowledge partner with 11 ministries on G20. So, as I was saying, the agriculture support, sort of the public support to agriculture, is driving multiple outcomes for various other sectors, but there is need for recalibration. Why? On social side, if you see the support is unequitably provided. Some crops, some farmer segments, larger farmers potentially, generally, some crops meaning rice and wheat are getting most of the support. Around 15% of the paddy farmers are actually getting access to the procurement services by government. Around 10% are getting access to the wheat procurement services by the farmers, by the government. So there is skew towards certain crops, certain segments, certain states. And I talked about the reduced diversity of in the production side, and therefore our plates. Also, yeah, so visibility is a bit difficult. So there is structural bias towards intensive agriculture practices that is leading to the kind of effects I talked about, as well as it is deterring investment in sustainable agriculture practices and technologies, because because of the subsidy to chemical fertilizers, for example. It is difficult for private investors to invest in bio input provision enterprises or biofertilizer production, etc. On economic side, the more investment going or more expenditure happening via subsidies then constrains the capital investment that can happen in the sector, which is then leading to less suboptimal expenditure in the sector. Also, ballooning of import bills for India. We saw that happen during the war as the fertilizers prices went up. There are a lot of recommendations that are already there on how can we recalibrate the way public support goes to agriculture. A lot of work by government bodies, non-government bodies on this front, but still the transition seems to be slow. What kind of recommendations we are looking at generally in these reports? So on water side, suggestions are such as, can there be a water quota for various farmers based on their socio-economic context, the kind of crops that they are doing in the kind of agroecological zones they are, and if they save it, can they maybe trade the water permits, or if they save the water, maybe they can be paid for the water savings. Similarly, can, instead of an umbrella subsidy on fertilizers, can the, or the power subsidy, can the subsidies be more targeted based on the socioeconomic structure of the farmer, the crops they're doing? What are the recommended crops in that region? Or can we target the subsidies based on the nutritional sensitivity of the crops, etc.? Then there are suggestions in these reports such as, can we actually merge all the subsidies, the variety of kind of subsidies, and provide a direct benefit transfer and allow farmers to have that agency to make that choice of where they want to invest based on their context, and allow therefore a more prudent use of that money. There are suggestions on price deficient payment, moving more towards price deficiency payments, and reducing expenditure on the procurement support that is provided directly, because it also requires a lot of infrastructure and logistics from the government side. So yeah, similarly, there are multiple recommendations out there. Why it has been difficult to move towards that? One obvious answer is the political economy, but that's a given. It's agriculture. The political economy is difficult. Within this context, we believe there are three reasons why the transition has been slow. There's lack of consensus on the strategies to recalibrate agriculture support. You already see a list here. There are many more recommendations out there, but because agriculture is very diverse in nature, in which context, what strategy will work, should work, there's limited consensus on that. Second, there is lack of evidence. Which is then, and particularly real pilots that can inform large scale government initiatives, and therefore lack of confidence moving ahead by the decision makers. And there are lack of actionable roadmaps that clearly tell government what should be the immediate, or not the government but the actors in the space, what can be the next quick concrete steps they should take up, particularly to address also the two challenges that I listed above. So how are we trying to attempt this transition or move the needle in Rajasthan? Some of the success factors we are trying to address: one, we're trying to align as much as possible with states' interests, and this is actually possible for many other states where there are uh, water stress levels are high. So in Rajasthan, 10% of the total budget, so 10% is around 18,500 crore, is the bill of subsidizing power to the farmers. Because it's such huge amount, there is clear interest in the government that to reduce that and optimize the expenditure on this front. Oh, Rajasthan is also very water scarce. 24 out of 33 districts are actually extracting more groundwater than what is extractable, advisable extractable. So all the interests are aligned towards reducing water extraction and therefore the energy consumption on that front. Another opportunity which is now emerged thanks to this year's announcement of PM Pranam scheme, where states would be provided with a grant equivalent to 50% of the savings that they can do on the fertilizer use front. In 2021, FY 2021, central government spent around 7,900 crore on fertilizer subsidy in the state of Rajasthan. Now, uh, earlier there was for state governments there was no incentive to focus on this, limited incentive to focus on this, but now there is much higher incentive on this front. Another success factor we're trying to unlock is making it a co-creative and participatory process as we build consensus or discover concrete ideas towards recalibrating uh, the government subsidies to agriculture. We are working very closely with Chief Minister's Rajasthan Economic Transformation Advisory Council, which is in-house think tank of the state, led by Dr. Arvind Mairam and team. They have facilitated our engagement with multiple departments there. So the recent consultation on this front we conducted, there were 17 officers from 10 departments who joined, where we evaluated together with them 39 recommendations and asking specific questions that could help us come up with concrete next steps. What are the immediate next steps that we can agree on so that we can move the needle on this front? Another success factor we are trying to unlock there is learning from existing lighthouse projects. Why there is lack of evidence, but what can we still learn from other efforts that are happening? For example, Pani Bachao, Pani Kamao scheme of Punjab, where we are incentivizing farmers to improve the water and electricity use. So, because we are part of FOLU, Terry was there to help us understand what can be the transferable learnings on this front for Rajasthan. Similarly, there are schemes such as Mera Khet Meri Virasat in Haryana, where farmers are being incentivized to diversify away from paddy. There is Bhavantar Bharpais Yojana in Haryana, in Madhya Pradesh, where for a certain set of crops, if the prices are lower than the suggested prices, the farmers are being provided price deficiency payment. So, what can we learn on these front? What kind of risks they are seeing, what kind of challenges they are seeing, and what are the mitigation these uh, states are doing on these schemes is very useful, and we are trying to bring that together in Rajasthan. And the last point, what we're trying to unlock there is co-creating an actionable roadmap. We want to ensure that while a larger roadmap clearly emerges for the state to move on, but there has to be clear, concrete next steps that are actionable, implementable in 1 to 2 years timeline, so that the needle starts moving. So, kind of next step that we are seeing in the conversations to emerge. One is low identification of low hanging pilots. For example, there are GPs in Rajasthan. Uh, if I'm right, there are 5 GPs in Rajasthan where under Atal Bhujal Yojana, water security plans have been developed in a participatory manner, and farmers are taking cropping choice decisions based on the water security plans. So these are ideal GPs to implement uh, pilots of recalibration of government support. Similarly, we are trying to identify what enablers would be required in future for such a recalibration. Data at farmer level would be essential. What farmer is doing which crop, what is the water usage of that land holding, and geotagging of that land, etc., would be essential. So how can the data from agriculture, water, and energy departments that is relevant for a land, a farmer, can come together so that more targeted subsidization becomes actually possible. So we are trying to enable concrete next steps on such fronts. And the last one is, while the first two items are possible where the consensus is already there, but there are still areas where consensus is lacking. There is very less clarity, so more focused studies would be required at a state level to to help the state identify the next steps. For example, we are in conversation with Raj Fed that does local procurement for the crops, and in the conversation they said that we are we have the logistics and infrastructures to actually procure the bajra and the jowar, but do we know whether it would be sort of bought by the buyers downstream? Because that clarity is not there, so it is important to do a demand assessment study. So we are trying to identify these focus studies that can then help the state government come up with concrete next steps. And with that, we hope we'll be able to move the needle on recalibrating government support towards agriculture, at least in the state. Thank you.
Thanks, Abov, for that insight into recalibrating agriculture subsidies. Now, our next speaker is Dr. Manish Anand. Manish is a senior fellow at TERI, and he has been working in this space on almost like 16 years, specifically focused on science and public policy research, and he also extensively write peer-reviewed articles and popular articles. So Manish will be talking about the crop diversification pathways in Punjab. Manish, please.
A very good afternoon to everyone. As the topic says, it's on crop diversification, and we are trying to do under this FOLU umbrella as a part in the state of Punjab. Uh, uh, we have adopted a agroclimatic zone approach, more in terms of since, as you know, India is classified into various agroclimatic zones, 15 agroclimatic zone, and the state of Punjab falls in the trans-Gangetic agroclimatic zone, and it has a set of issues and challenges in that zone. Hari had also, in his opening remarks, talked about the urban and the rural connect, and this zone is typical of that supply-demand connect, in the sense the way the food system is organized in this part. It feeds to the, as a food ball of the country, it feeds to the food security, aids in the food security of the nation, and also to the poor, rural and urban poor. So there's a great connect, and this is also one of the drivers of the cropping pattern, the way the crop is been planned and organized in this part, and there is a need to change that pattern, and for various reasons. So we try to unlock some of the drivers of this change in this region of India. So just to give a brief background, as you all know that, like, globally, when we see agricultural systems have become more or less more increasingly simplified over the past century. And this is driven by the need for increased food production, then also economic profit, as well as more in terms of risk reduction strategy as well. But today we see many farms have, like, it's highly monoculture led, and which uses a lot of inputs, chemical inputs, as well as it's more of like in this, like in the case of Punjab, it is the paddy dominated belt, so and which has a lot of ecological consequences. And there are ample number of studies, scientific studies globally as well as in India, which says that okay, this is leading to n number of problems related to ecology, environment, as well as profitability of the farm in the long run, and it has a lot of social implications as well, more in terms of we are witnessing suicides in part of the country. So there is a huge, but at the same time, then we have issues related to sustainable development goals, where there is a target and driver incentives towards transitioning to sustainable food systems, particularly SDG 2.3 and 2.4, which talks about doubling income, 2.3 farmers' income, and the 2.4 it's sustainable food systems, and that underpins the need for diversification and moving away from this highly input intensive monocultures in different parts of the world, and particularly in this region of the world. As well, we know that there are ample benefits on moving towards mixed or diversified cropping systems in terms of ecological, environment, social benefits, but they are very less when it comes to evidences in terms of what is the implications on the profits and economic returns and the costs And so you will see there is the literature or the studies are not coherent in that sense. Different studies are showing it in different directions, and so there's a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty in terms of the evidence base for in terms of particularly on the costs and the economic front. So the need for undertaking studies and that line. We have in India different programs and schemes associated with related to crop diversification, as you can see. So as a part, we wanted to understand more in terms of what are the drivers of this kind of and why there is a lock-in. So what could be? So we did more in terms of more an economic analysis also of different alternative pathways, and also try to understand the practices and perceptions of the farmers. So accordingly, the goals were to generate evidence for policy interventions, also understand the barriers and lock-ins, also to understand innovations in forms of technical, organizational, and institutional, what sort of business models and all can promote such kind of diversifications across the value chain. Accordingly, and then develop long-term strategies. So the framework under this initiative or the umbrella is we have coined it more in terms of as a part of this track initiative, which is thriving resilient agri-food systems through crop diversification and knowledge stewardship. There are four legs to, so to say, the grain bit. We feel that it has to be the cropping system has to be geographically aligned. Then also the supply and the value chain needs to be there, and as well as which needs to be smart as well. And also it has to be the climate change dimension is very important. So we have undertaken a study as a part of another project more in terms of what are the implications of climate change vulnerability for food production in the region. And so that's there. So resilience is a very important part, both from mostly from the adaptation perspective, then also the nutrition aspect. As we all know, it has it's like highly skilled towards carbohydrate and all, and we need diverse food in our plate. So we have organized more in terms of understanding the drivers and diversity of food systems. So there may be a slow or low diversification. You cannot move instantly and diversify. In some regions, there could be a steady increase in diversification, and there could be a high diversification in some pockets. So these are some the way indicators have been arranged. The variables characterizing the drivers could be also more in terms of the behavior of farmers with respect to diversification, because what happens, they may diversify, then again there could be cases or incidences of backtracking, and some farmers may continue, so understanding that. Then also more in terms of the structural variables in terms of the farm location, the mix, including the crop livestock mix, the infrastructure, the value chain presence, and all this. So this just gives a very quick snapshot of how things have changed over the years in the region of Punjab, and we had focused specifically on Kharif. So as we all know, it's paddy dominated. So when we go back to 1970, the paddy was around 23%. Now it is, you can see it is 95%. So it's like mostly dominated by paddy, and the diversity has diminished over the years, so to say, in the region. But at the same time, there is a scope and need which is to diversify, and we had conducted stakeholder workshops there involving a lot of representation of farmers from across the region. And the scope, and some of them are practicing, but still lots needs to be done on various fronts. This does also gives a snapshot on the environmental implications of such monoculture. As you can see, in Punjab, around 114 blocks out of 150 blocks are overexploited. So just this gives and this is the Central Groundwater Board data, and this gives how grave the situation is in terms of, and this has been reported in different government reports as well as the expert committee reports. The famous one being the Joel Committee report, which had twice come out and said that, okay, this is not going to work in the state, and there's a need for that. In fact, the National Green Tribunal chairman has also talked about this. So, in terms of farmers' cropping decisions and implications for crop diversification, we have seen that so in the past 2 decades and all, there has been no change, and they are practicing this paddy wheat cycle for long. And the need for infrastructural and regulatory measures is found to be very huge with farmers in nudging change. So rather than climate change related factors, so we say that there are climate change related vulnerability and all, but the farmers' perception is that we need more of infrastructure and regulatory measures, including value chains for the alternative crops. Then, at present, obviously, the decisions of the farmers are driven by short-term profit rather than the long-term measures. And also, one of the, maybe you all are aware that there's a strong policy support and incentive system for the continuation of paddy in the region, in terms of procurement, in terms of provision of electricity, irrigation, and all this, subsidies on fertilizers. So there is a policy-based support is the need. There's a lot of scope for information, education, and communication activities among farmers on sustainability, awareness, and all this, and what will be the impacts of alternatives and all if introduced, both in terms of economic as well as environmental implications. We also try to understand more in terms of the nutritional linkages between the production and consumption. So we could not find any clear correlation between crops grown and consumed. Also, farmers practicing mixed farming were not necessarily better off in their nutritional access. Also, like self-produced consumption of cereals, other food items, mostly procured from local shops. So it's like they are dependent on outside sources for their own consumption need as well. So we had adopted a pathways approach more in terms of how to go about and look at the picture more in terms of to understand the political economy of this whole the climate crop diversification game. So why we had adopted, because it gives that provides us some nuanced understanding of where the real challenge is. So we try to understand, say, the pathways of yield enhancement. So the alternative crops, if we go to the best yield level, what will be the impacts on economic returns and all. So we found that still the paddy is going to be the number one, even on those fronts, even if we go the best yield level. So how do we go about it? So we brainstormed on that. So similarly, value addition for different crops pathways, what are the issues and challenges we try to sustainable intensification. We try to look at not farm as just substituting paddy for something, but looking at the whole cropping cycle and all. So how different combinations is going to work, and the net profit, income, and all that. So that's going to also we try to explore more in terms of the we need finance. So the role of adaptation finance in that, and we came out with a ballpark figure that to move from paddy to alternate crops, we need around 2,400-500 crores. And the present government is providing 1,000 crores for crop diversification in the Punjab in its latest budget announcement. So we have tried to look into those different pathways and try to understand from the farmers and the stakeholders how do we go about it and all. So we found that for this kind of work, we also need to dive in on the different agroecologies of Punjab. So the next step we are trying to do also is try to understand how, because in different agroecologies, Punjab is divided into 6 agroecology. So and it has different cropping systems and patterns, and now paddy is dominated in all. So how we move in particular agroecology, if we move to alternates, so what is the present dynamics in terms of these pathways and all, and try to understand the power relations among the the actors and the networks. So this is the approach we are undertaking in the study, and still a work in progress. So it will be happy to connect with you all. Thank you.
Punjab can be a tough terrain, especially when we start thinking about crop diversification. So we are trying to come up some solutions for that stage as well. Thanks, Manish. So our next technical speaker is Dr. Seema Yadav. Seema is a Senior Program Associate at Sustainable Landscape and Restoration at WRI-India. Her work at WRI focuses on implementing sustainable and regenerative agriculture in the rural villages of Maharashtra and exploring pathways for sustainable agriculture in urban and peri-urban areas. So today she'll be talking about assessing status of sustainable and urban and peri-urban agriculture in India. Seema, over to you.
So all the speaker prior to me spoke about agriculture and largely focusing on the rural part. Today I'm speaking about agriculture, looking at the lens from urban and peri-urban areas. Do we have any scope for agriculture in urban and peri-urban area? So this study was taken up with the partnership UNEP, NORAD, and under Shift Initiative, this scoping study was done. The aim was to study the what is the existing status of urban and peri-urban agriculture, what are the challenges, and what could be the potential solutions. So this study is largely completed. We got some good number of uh, views. So broadly speaking, what is the need of the focusing on urban and peri-urban agriculture at the first place? Then what will be the contours of what were the contours of this study that we did, and how we did it was what was our methodology, what challenges we identified, and what solutions all came through. Thanks. So this entire, whatever the findings are, all are from consultation series of interviews and some case studies. Looking at, so many of us have already, spoken. Many of my co-panelists have already spoken. What is why are we focusing on the food system these days? Because the population is ever increasing, demand for food is increasing, and especially the demand for food is kind of become ubiquitous at every place. Everybody wants lettuce, be it in Ladakh, be it in Kerala, be it in Chennai. Everybody wants baby corn, be it in Kolkata, be it in Rajasthan, irrespective of where it is being grown. So the demand for food is becoming almost uniform across. The diversities, the kind of diversity that consumer is preferring is not with respect to the region from where it is being sourced. And also some member was speaking about the global hunger index and the India's position in it, so we all know about it. And as projected, around 80% of the food demand will come from urban areas by 2050. So this makes us to focus on our food systems and to divert some attention from squarely focusing on rural area to chances of, or maybe what are the opportunities in urban and peri-urban areas. So for this we did some consultation series. The first one in the series was a scoping study held in Delhi itself. It was a national level scoping consultation. We had participants from diverse groups representing NGOs, government representation was there, research organizations were there, university academicians were there, then some farm practitioners in urban and peri-urban area. We have Manas with us. He was with us in most of the consultation. So we had three different consultation. One was the scoping consultation. In the scoping consultation, we decided upon the themes. It all came through the participants. Then there were regional consultations. Two regional consultations were held, one in Chandigarh and one in Bangalore, to get the view of the participants about the urban and peri-urban care. Then we had some interview series from experts. So we did one-to-one interview with the experts, sought their view on what is the current status of urban and peri-urban agriculture in India, and what are the scopes and challenges of it. And then we also did some secondary literature review, like existing legislative support for it, kind of support it has, and what kind of support it requires. So again the same thing, but the middle part of the slide, you can see the middle column says regional diagnostic consultation. So whatever the discussion was done in these 7 themes. These are food system discourse. Under the food system discourse, we covered largely everything, right from the stage of production till the stage of disposal. So it involved from production to transportation, to wholesaler, to retailer, and then to finally where is it ending its fate. And then policy discourse, what kind of support exists in India for urban and peri-urban agriculture. Then resilience discourse, we all know, we all went through COVID and we all saw how our food supply chains were disrupted during COVID. We all might be from very well backgrounds, so we might not have faced that much of difficulty as a poor or a migrant might have faced during the COVID. So resilience discourse discuss the sustainability of our supply chains. Then we discuss the circularity and sustainable discourse. Here we discuss the circularity of resources, resource utilization, from where the resource is coming and where is it going. Are we using the resource efficiently, or are we doing some wastage of it? Then nutrition discourse discussed, are we eating the healthy food? The somebody was talking about in the previous session about hidden hunger. So are we eating the food that we eat, if even if it is filling us, then is it nutritious enough? Diversity do we have? Then economic discourse, how we may have options, but are they affordable to everyone in the population? Then we have some cross-cutting themes which spoke about data monitoring and other challenges. So these are some of the subnational initiatives present around sustainable and urban peri-urban agriculture in India. The Arca Vertical Garden Scheme is by Kerala government. It supports if somebody is interested in having a home garden, maybe for their own purpose. This image is from the same scheme. It says you can have this small setup. We'll subsidize you for this. Then we have rooftop gardening scheme in Bihar. So they have a criteria. If you have around 300 square feet of roof area in your place, then you can avail the facility. There are some criteria for getting that incentive. I think they provide some 50% of the incentive for this. Then you have do it yourself kit scheme, e-cool mandi in Odisha. The e-cool mandi actually caters to, like, once you have your harvest, then how do you store, because not every farmer can afford the warehouse. The government is providing that platform for storing. These are some of the state level initiatives in India. So what major challenges, first of all, I'll speak about the challenges that came through all these discussions. The first is the participants identified that the cultivation is very resource intensive these days. And we all know, like, the preference of consumer is to buy beautiful food. I mean, the food which is flawless. You want a loki which doesn't have any spot. You want a fruit. I mean, we prefer a guava which is this big in size, covered in a meshy net and doesn't have any spot. But nobody asks how this such beautiful or spotless fruit is produced. So do they have any some externalities attached with it? Nobody asks that. And then there are again post harvest losses, and there are bottlenecks in the supply chain. That's why the post harvest losses are very huge. My friend Nitya has already spoken about post harvest losses. Then we have like food loss and food waste concern. We are since morning speaking about this aspect. Then policy discourse. So participants largely agreed that there is largely an absence of clear-cut policy discourse on this. So there are, the dedicated department is usually the horticulture department for supporting some of the initiatives, and there are at a guidance level, they recognize that at the first place, who should be guiding, who should be taking the lead, is difficult to identify under this scheme. So also there are some unintended perverse incentives that are coming through some or the other ways. Like for example, here solid waste management rule 2016 is highlighted. Under this rule, there is a provision, tipping fee provision. Under this tipping fee provision, the contractor who has to supply waste from in city or urban municipal area to the dumping site or maybe wherever, he is paid out of, he's paid after the weighing the weight that he shifts to the landfill site. But there is no criteria to differentiate between the content of the waste. Is it a biodegradable waste or is it a non-biodegradable waste? So what is happening is, they are paid on per ton basis. So they take the entire biodegradable waste because it's wet waste. It increases the weight. So their earnings. So this is unintended. When this came to our consultation, so one of the ex-secretary of the government was with us. So he said, this never came to us. So good, you people highlighted this. And then there are some equity and inclusion gaps. On resilience discourse, Jahari also spoke about this in the beginning, that we are facing issue of supply chains. If we focus on focusing on 25 rupee tomato in Gurgaon and 8 rupee tomato from Andhra Pradesh, but then they are distance apart. If you connect them through transportation, then there are challenges of food miles, emission from the food supply chain. Their longer supply chains are also vulnerable. We have already seen in times of COVID. Under circularity and sustainability discourse, again the same thing, that under this tipping fee provision, we are not capitalizing on the organic waste that we could do under the waste, that is organic waste or biodegradable waste that is coming from our municipal areas. That organic waste can be utilized for converting into composting or some other purposes, but we are not capitalizing on that. And then also there are concerns about the reuse of recycled water in urban limits. We all must be knowing that in urban areas we have a condition to use the recycled water for irrigation and horticulture purposes. During our Bangalore consultation, the regional consultation, it came out that the recycled water is not meeting the criteria, not up to the criteria, because there are some parameters which are being tested before declaring the recycled water to be fit for the use. But there are some, heavy metals are not in the criteria list. So the list of criteria itself is, they say, incomplete. You're not covering the heavy metals in the water. And if you irrigate the crop with the water which is laden with heavy metal, you are increasing the chances of bioaccumulation. Under nutrition discourse, again the same thing. There's dissonance between the consumer preferences and what is available. So this way we all, these were some of the major challenges under the 7 themes. Then came out some solutions, that there is a good opportunity to promote community cultivation in urban areas. The way we do contract farming, we give a area to some contractor for doing managing contract parking. Why can't we do it for cultivation in urban areas? Give it to some interested group of people or some organization, unutilized or underutilized areas. They can do contract farming over it, and they can cater to at least to the nearby areas. Then there were suggestions of creating dedicated zones in urban areas, identifying the nutrient status. If there are some areas where we identify that this area is habited by slums or maybe a poor class, economically poor class, then you can have some area around that zone where you can promote urban agriculture. Then came in our Chandigarh consultation, there was a farmer from Himachal Pradesh. He said he is cultivating organic tomato, but he is not getting the premium price that he should actually get, and he is forced to sell his organic tomato at the same price which the conventional farmer is doing. And for this, he suggested that the best would be to have a processing center either in urban or peri-urban area, because this is availability of technology is an issue in rural area, but this can be done in peri-urban area. Then on policy discourse came that first of all, the priority thing is to identify the implementing agency. And on this, many of the participants came out that it should come through local level, urban local bodies, or maybe through municipal corporations. But since for any, to have a dedicated policy on urban and peri-urban agriculture, you need to have a scale of that kind. And everybody agreed that we don't have adoption, forget about the scaling. So for policy, we need to start from the bottom, not from the top. And urban local bodies or local level agencies would be best to guide any policy initiatives on this. Again, for solid waste management rule, the unintended perverse incentives, we need to address those incentives. First of all, identify those perverse incentives which are unintended, and then address those. Resilience discourse, the best is to have a shorter supply chain. There were suggestions of creating cohorts of states where 2-3 states are merging together to form a region where they're exchanging produce between them. Maybe tomato from Rajasthan is going to Haryana, from Haryana wheat is going to Punjab, and from Punjab some rice is going to Rajasthan. So this way, creating some regional associations and promoting resilient crops, climate resilient crops, to address the resilience discourse. Then for circularity and sustainability discourse, there was suggestions of adopting alternative production methods, like you have hydroponics, or maybe you have vertical gardens, roof gardens. Nutrition discourse, for food safety and nutrition concerns, it came that even the schools could be the starting point for this. You can have nutri gardens in school. They can support midday meal scheme as well, and this will bring children with association of their food production system. Like they would get to know what crop is grown in which season, what are the basic requirements of growing it, and they can have food from directly from the school gardens. Economic, if you promote urban agriculture, it can also provide opportunity to have some livelihood chance opportunities for migrant and unskilled rural migrants in urban area. Usually they come from family from an agriculture background. They do have skills, but that is not equally utilized in urban areas. But if you promote urban agriculture, their skills can also be merged with the program. Then you have needed it. So I mean, what we suggest out of all this, and what we all felt out of this, including our participants, we and our organizers, that we need to focus on the supply chain in the first place. We need to make them efficient. We need to focus on making our transportation efficient. We need to bring production consumption centers closer. Urban areas may not have that opportunity, but there is some opportunity for this in peri-urban areas. Peri-urban areas can produce at least something which is perishable, so that it can be produced, shifted to urban area from peri-urban area. But the dry food like cereals or maybe pulses can be sourced from the distant area, far off places. Then we need to customize strategies for both. And first, we need to look at peri-urban and urban separately. These both are different aspects to look at. Their challenges are separate, and their solution definitely would be separate. And then again, developing inclusive policies, and we do need research and awareness building on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Seema. I know some of you might have some questions, which is there in your mind. So you can catch hold of our speakers over the tea after this session. So now our last speaker is Miss Bette Langset, who is the Counselor for Environment at the Royal Norwegian Embassy, New Delhi. Bette, in fact, we kept you till the end because we didn't mention at the beginning all these project which has been presented here, except the last one, supported by NICFI, Norwegian International Initiative on Forest and Climate. So, and you have been a wonderful supporter to us, since you've come as a councillor in India. So we would like to hear from you when after 2 years, after the second phase of FOLU, where we have been with the support from the Royal Norwegian Embassy. So please. Talk to us, your thoughts and your reflection on the work what you do.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, thank you for inviting me first. You may wonder, but you maybe explained it a bit. Why is Norway here? We have the 3% of our land area is useful for agriculture. So agriculture is not a very big business in Norway, even it's very important for us politically. But Norway has for more than a decade worked closely with governments, business and scientists and civil society to reduce tropical forest loss and reduce emissions from deforestation and forest degradation through FOLU, among other organizations. And these emissions represent close to a fifth of all global emissions, and without forest loss is halted and reversed, reaching to the Paris climate goals of limiting global warming to 1.2 to 2 degrees will not be possible. And these efforts has also been an important contribution to protect nature and biodiversity, but will increasingly need to play a role in also in safeguarding our global natural genetic resources, and we all depend on for our food system, for our food security, and for jobs and welfare for millions of farmers and farming communities. And food systems, both globally and domestic, represent a huge opportunity to deliver integrated solutions on climate, health, nutrition, nature, and inclusive growth. And in our view, the Food and Land Use Coalition's 10 critical transition offer a much needed pathway for countries to transform food system to align fully with our global and domestic targets for climate, nature, health and nutrition, and for food security. And each country, India included, will need to follow their own pathway, tailored to local and national circumstances. However, we will need increased sharing of experience, ideas, innovations, examples of social entrepreneurship, and thus encourage each other to pursue higher ambitions. And today I will thank FOLU, India and her many key partners for offering a venue for this, for providing me with examples from India's partners on pathway for food systems transformation, and for inspiring more and bolder action. And this is kind of from the Norwegian side, but also for me it has been very enlightening. It's always interesting to hear from leading voices and organizations how agriculture, climate, nutrition, and livelihood are connected, like today. And women also have an important role in these challenges. And I am happy to see that I've been a part of a gender balanced panel today.
You also made it.
Yeah. And I have to admit that today I had to Google from fork to farm. What's the meaning of fork to farm? Because I've heard about farm to fork. That gave me, I knew what that was. But I think that to think also from fork to farm, to think urban needs is a really interesting way to see it. So for me, it was kind of a new way of thinking, and thank you for giving me this perspective today. Yeah, you know, like farm to fork is in Europe and Norway focus, and it's also focused on food loss and food waste, and it is increasing because we need all the resources we have. And I think that, as I said, the focus on fork to farm is an interesting and also a productive way to look closer to sustainable food systems. And I'm a farmer's daughter myself, and I'm a logistiker by heart. So I think these topics, they are important also for me, not only for Norway. And I hope, and I'm looking forward to the Q&As after that. So thank you for giving me the possibility to say some words.
I think thanks, Bette, for that reflection. And I must say that Bette herself is a farmer, coming from a farmer family, and she knows how agriculture works. And yeah, so we close the session here, and because the next session is also due at 4:30, so the tea is available here. Please join us for the tea, and also if you have any specific questions, meet our panels there. If any pressing, do not have time. One question since you are there, yeah, we can take that. Just one. Yeah. Yeah, please.
See, we have been speaking about the rural-urban connect from this. Number one, because you have developed certain case studies by virtue of like that you have been working with the farmers. Definitely. Did you have any question from the farmers about their dwelling income? Number one. Number two, what you have said in this session, in every session discussed, that what urbans wanted from the farmers, what from the farmers. But have there been questions from the farmers that what do they want from the urban?
Yeah, in both our regional consultations, there were farmers. In Punjab, we had farmers from different districts, and most of them were saying that we are happy to do organic farming. We are not very inclined towards chemical input in the farming, but there is issue of production. And the consumer, on consumer side, consumer is willing. In Chandigarh, there it is happening that people are making groups and they are doing contract farming with the farmer. They are doing some pre-contract that we'll pay you for your harvest. Please don't do some chemical input. Instead, do some organic input, farmyard input, manure and all, and then we'll procure it from you. But the issue is of again, I mean, I would say trust between the consumer and the producer. The farmer who is doing organic cultivation is not able to get the produce because he is in a rural area. For a consumer, there was cases that we can't go and farmer can produce either one or two or three types of crop, not everything. While consumer prefers to purchase it's weekly, I mean, grocery at one go. I mean, either on a weekend or something. So he says, I want everything under one roof. I can't go and, I mean, make contact with the individual farmer this way. So for this, I mean, there were suggestions for this. Farmers themselves came out that we need some platform for this. If government can create a platform for us, where one farmer producing tomato, other producing organic potato, other producing organic spinach, if they all can come under one roof, and then it's an ease for farmer for selling, and it's an ease for consumer for purchasing, and then there is a trust. For this, then government needs to build something where, I mean, the trust, where to place the trust. Is it through certification? Then for certification also there were questions that I mean, there are malpractices happening in case of certifications as well. So for that also we need some stringent monitoring. So farmers are interested for this, and even consumers are happy, but the trust sometimes takes time to build actually.